Ciao ragazzi, this is Talk Calcio TV on YouTube. Ciao, come stai? Welcome to this episode of Talk Calcio TV with myself, Domenico. And this episode we are completely dedicated to the big match on Sunday. That is the Turin Derby, Torino hosting Juventus at the Olympic Stadium, or as it's known in Italy, the Derby della Mole. The Derby della Mole is of course the Turin Derby, contested by its two football teams, Juventus and Torino. It gets its name after the Mole Antonelliani, a major landmark in the city of Piemonte, the north region of Italy. Of course, it is the sculptural symbol as well of the city. Of course, Turin, if you know you're Italian, translates, of course, bull. It is the city of the raging bull. It is the longest serving Italian derby between the two clubs from the same city. Now, on paper, of course, when you look through the history, you would say it's all Juventus. I'm sure they've always considered AC Milan, Inter Milan, whoever's going for the Scudetto as their major rivals. More so though for the Granate, that is Torino, they see this as the game that they would like to win in there. So, a bit of a history lesson on the two clubs of Turin. Juventus were formed in 1897, that's nearly 121 years ago, as Sport Club Juventus. Juventus, of course, translates the youth. Originally, their traditional colours were pink and black. But that all changed in 1903 when Englishman John Savage from Nottingham contacted someone back home who happened to be a Notts County fan. Of course, for those who don't know, Notts County being the oldest club in the history of the game, they play in black and white stripes. Well, they sent their copies of their shirts to Turin, and from that day onwards, Juventus stuck with the famous black and white stripes as they are known to this day as the Bianconeri. So the famous strip was actually born in Nottingham. They are also known as La Vecchia Signora. Now there's two theories behind that naming. One to state that they are the oldest club in Turin. Two, as a sarcastic remark, of course, Juventus translating as the name youth. Overall, of course, they are Italy's most successful club. They have won 33 Scudettos, 2 Champions League, as well as all the other trophies that they've won, of course, with several Coppa Italias as well. So, in 1906, that was just 9 years after Juventus were formed, became the other team from Turin, of course, Torino, bearing the name of the city. Traditionally, when they were formed, they wore Savoia blue in 1906, although their colours then changed later to maroon, of course, the colour synonymous with the raging bull, which is on both teams' badges, both Juventus and Torino. They are among Italy's most successful clubs. They have won the Scudetto 7 times. Of course, in the 1940s, the Grande Torino, as they were known, they won 5 consecutive Scudettos until tragedy struck in 1948 when the team, on the way back from a friendly in Lisbon, of course, crashed in Superga, which is a church just outside Turin. Of course, the whole entire team and management were killed in the air crash. Now, of course, last week, it was 60 years since Manchester United, the Munich air disaster. Manchester United came back from the Munich air crash bigger and stronger to the team they are today. It's fair to say with Torino, though, they never quite recovered. They have only won the Scudetto once since then, and that was in 1975 to 1976. Since then, beating the Bianconeri, their cross-city rivals Juventus, has been the be-all and end-all for them. The first Turin Derby took place on the 13th of January 1907, just 1 year after Torino were formed. Now, there was a bit of hostility between the two clubs before their first meeting, as Torino was a merger from Torinese Football Club, but also backed by some Juventus dissidents. A financial backer by the name of Alfredo Dick played a major part in the foundation of Torino. In fact, it's believed in the first game, for his own safety, he was locked in a cupboard. He had other supporters telling him and keeping him updated of what was going on during the match itself. So, who supports Juventus and who supports Torino? Why is it that the club with the name of the city has far less supporters than the team that is named, well, after youth? A lot of it goes back to the mass immigration to Turin in the 50s and the 60s. Of course, as you know, Turin is the home of Fiat, of course, which is also owned by the Agnelli family, who own Juventus. It's believed a lot of these migrant workers felt that if they supported Juventus, they were trying to please their boss. So Juventus became known as the boss's team, or even mocked by Torino as the Fiat team. It's also a bit of a divide in the Piemonte region to this day. It's believed that, so say, the northern region support Torino and the southern support in Juventus, although most of them do support Juventus, the club that was formed 9 years before their cross-city rivals Torino, even if they do bear the name of the city. Overall, Juventus have won the Derby della Mole 99 times. Torino have won it 73 times. There have been 62 draws, 361 goals scored by Juventus, 314 scored by Torino. Now, despite the overall results of the derby generally in favour of Juventus, historically in the 1912 to 1914, Torino won 3 times on the trot, scoring 23 goals in those games. There's a famous 8-0 win on the 17th of November 1912, which they've never ever let Juventus faithful forget to this day in terms of the Tifosi. Of course, Torino were the dominant force in Turin in the 1940s before the Superga air crash, which we mentioned earlier on. Incidents in the history of this game. In 1967, of course, Torino thumped Juventus 4-0. The Bianconeri faithful were so incensed, they decided to go and desecrate the grave of former Torino player Gigi Moroni. Now, on the 1st of December 2012, of course, the two teams met in the first game at Juventus' newly built, now called the Allianz Arena, Juventus Stadium at the time. Of course, at one stage, the two teams with the Raging Bull on their badge shared the same stadium before, of course, Torino went back to the Olympic Stadium. There were 50 arrests, there was fires before the game, there was even dustbins being thrown at each other as well. Of course, Juventus won that game with the goals thanks to Claudio Marchisio on the score sheet twice and Sebastian Giovinco. The Bianconeri romped home to a 3-0 win that day. Then, of course, there was the grim incident when the Juventus Tifosi held a 25-foot banner mocking their cross-city rivals, given the Superga air crash. It's fair to say that didn't go down very well with the Granata faithful. So, form guide going into the big clash this Sunday. Juventus, as we know, have won their last 6 Serie A games straight. However, during the week, having been 2-0 up against Spurs in the Champions League, they surrendered a 2-goal lead, conceding 2 away goals. Their performance was criticised by all areas of the Italian media, and also as coach Massimo Allegri, he was crucified and vilified not just by the press but his own supporters, if you read the social media posts. Juventus, though, however, they have not lost to Torino in 7 meetings. A last win for the Granate was in the 2014-2015 season, when, of course, in Massimo Allegri's first season as the Bianconeri coach, they lost 2-1. However, Juventus did go on to win the Serie A Scudetto and with the Coppa Italia, as well as reaching the Champions League final, which they unfortunately lost to Barcelona 3-1 in Berlin. It's fair to say that the Bianconeri had the last laugh there. Torino, of course, though, haven't lost under new coach Walter Mazzarri since he replaced Sinisa Mihajlovic. Juventus have beaten Torino, of course, this season 4-0 in Serie A and, of course, 2-0 in the Coppa Italia. That was the last action or last game of Sinisa Mihajlovic before Walter Mazzarri replaced him. So we look at the key men from both sides this weekend. For Juventus, you have to say Gonzalo Higuain. Paulo Dybala, we believe, is still injured. He's unlikely to feature. He may be on the bench. Now, Higuain right now is on great goal scoring form. Of course, during the week he scored twice against Spurs inside the first 75 seconds and then a penalty. However, he missed a chance later on, and his penalty then struck the bar, which beat Hugo Lloris. It's fair to say that was a game-changing moment in that tie at home for Juventus against Spurs. We go into the Granata camp, and you have to say Andrea Belotti. Who else? Of course, he's not been fully fit. He's had struggled with injury this year. He did break his scoring duck last week, though, against Udinese as they won 2-0. My prediction on the game, I'm just going to say this tie has nothing to do with my thoughts on this one. I just have a feeling that we're going to get an upset in this game. One, given, of course, Juventus, the way they surrendered the league during the week against Spurs. Torino have not lost under Walter Mazzarri. Strange as the man is, he will let his players know that this is the be-all and end-all to the fans this season. Of course, the Granata will have nothing more than to put a dent in Juventus' hopes of retaining the Scudetto, as they are 1 point behind Napoli right now. I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to go for an upset. I think Torino are just going to edge this one on this weekend. Of course, this derby game, we're not going to see pretty football. It's going to be win at all costs. But I think that the ball is in the court of the Granata. That is my prediction. We are going for a Torino. So thank you for watching this episode of Talk Calcio TV. Now, just before we go, I've recently finished this book. Of course, if you can see it, The Day Italian Football Died. It's definitely a good read. It is based on Torino's time before the famous Superga air crash, where it's fair to say, as we mentioned earlier, the club never really recovered. And if you like your Italian football history like I do, I definitely recommend it as a read. So, tell us what you think of this weekend's big clash between Torino and Juventus in the Derby della Mole, or the Turin Derby. Tell us what you think. Who will win? Will it be the reigning champions Juventus as they look to put the pressure on Napoli? Or will we see an upset and will Walter Mazzari's undefeated streak continue as Torino boss? Let us know, like, comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Talk Calcio TV on YouTube. We will speak to you next episode where we preview all this weekend's round 25 fixtures in Serie A. Arrivederci.